Good afternoon. Thank you for watching. This is Now. You got Jonathan and Ashley right here in the H&N Digital Center. We got some breaking news. Just moments ago, City Prosecutor Steve Alm wrapped up a press conference in regards to a deadly officer-involved shooting that took place in Kalihi in August of last year.
That's right. HPD said a man with a machete was shot and killed by officers after he ignored orders to put down the weapon and charged at them. Here's some of what Steve Alm had to say.
This is an independent investigation of Elia Laeli for the events that took place on August 11, 2021. Two questions when it comes to what we do for investigations. First, was the use of deadly force resulting in the shooting of Mr. Laeli justified? And second, will any charges be filed against the two Honolulu Police Department officers who shot Mr. Laeli? Our conclusion is the use of deadly force, which resulted in the death of Mr. Laeli, was justified, and as a result, no charges will be filed against the two Honolulu police officers who shot Mr. Laeli.
Prosecutor Steve Alm also shared this surveillance video of the two officers from HPD shooting the 41-year-old suspect. Those officers were responding to a call of another man who allegedly had his hand severed by the machete that the suspect was wielding. Here's more from Steve Alm explaining why no charges will be filed against the two officers.
Officer 1 instructed Mr. Laeli multiple times to drop the knife. Mr. Laeli continued to advance on Officer 1 and raise the machete over his head. Officer 1 started firing at Mr. Laeli. And while he was retreating, he tripped over the parking stop as he was going backwards. And he continued to fire at Mr. Laeli, who now was coming over him with a machete raised above his head. He fired a total of, Officer 1 fired a total of 8 times at Mr. Laeli. And Mr. Laeli dropped to the ground. Officer 1 then got to his feet and kicked the machete away from Mr. Laeli. And Officer 1 signaled to the ambulance personnel who were treating Witness 1 for medical assistance for Mr. Laeli.
President Biden arrived in Brussels a few hours ago, and traveling with him is Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent John Decker. Thanks for being with us, John. Now, what is the purpose of this trip and what's on the agenda?
The purpose of the trip is to show a unified front. The president will have 3 meetings tomorrow right here in Brussels. One meeting is with his NATO counterparts. Another meeting is a G7 meeting, the leaders of all G7 countries meeting here in Brussels. That meeting was called by Germany. And lastly, the president will attend a summit of the European Commission. The purpose of all 3 meetings, showing a unified front as it relates to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Also, we are expecting, Ashley, an announcement of further sanctions that will be imposed upon Russia, not only by the U.S., but also by our European allies.
Right, and we know that President Biden has warned China to stay out of this war. Will that be discussed with the European allies?
We learned tonight from the National Security Advisor to the President, Jake Sullivan. The answer to that question is yes. As you know, President Biden, as you just mentioned, had a 2-hour conversation with President Xi within the past week. That conversation was one in which the president conveyed the message to President Xi, stay on the sidelines, do not get involved militarily in terms of helping out Russia in this conflict. And the message the president will have and deliver with our European allies is that they need to be unified, if need be, and impose tough sanctions on China if indeed China does get involved in helping out the Russian military by conveying weapons to them. So that will be a part of the agenda during all 3 meetings that the president has tomorrow morning.
Right, and we know that the president is against a no-fly zone in Ukraine, but there may be talks about some other ways to help. Is that right?
That's correct, Ashley. The Pentagon has been having discussions with NATO partners in Eastern Europe. These NATO partners in Eastern Europe, like Slovakia, for instance, have in their inventory air defense systems that were formerly a part of the Soviet Union. They are Soviet-era and Russian-era air defense systems, the SA-8, the SA-300 short-range and long-range missile defense systems. If indeed these are conveyed to the Ukrainian military and implemented, that will serve essentially as a no-fly zone because they're incredibly effective instruments to be used against the Russian military.
Right, interesting development there. And, John, along with the war, there's this humanitarian crisis happening, millions of refugees. Are we expecting any announcements on that?
We are, but that will come a little bit later this week. The president, after traveling here to Brussels, will then move on to Warsaw, Poland. On Saturday, he'll meet with President Duda of Poland, and the purpose of that meeting is twofold. One, Poland has been the country that has been receiving most of these refugees. Well over 1.5 million refugees from Ukraine have swarmed into Poland, also neighboring Romania. The president will deliver a message that financial help in dealing with that humanitarian crisis is on the way. The other purpose of visiting Poland, sending a message to President Putin: do not think of going beyond Ukraine. Do not think of entering into any NATO country, because there will be consequences for that, very severe consequences.
All right, Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent traveling with President Biden overseas, John Decker, thank you so much.
And that effort to raise the minimum wage in the state is still alive at the ledge. Casey Lund brings us this update.
Aloha. We are talking about a big increase, essentially an $8 an hour raise over the next 4 years. But it's important to know how we got to this figure. There were essentially two bills that were introduced. The first bill in the House was meant to take the minimum wage to $18 an hour by the year 2030. The Senate bill that was introduced was a little bit more aggressive, taking our minimum wage to $18 an hour by the year 2026. The House bill right now is the only one that has momentum moving forward at the moment, and that has been amended to match the original Senate bill. Again, $18 an hour by the year 2026. Earlier today, we talked to Senator Brian Taniguchi, who introduced that original Senate bill, about why Hawaii workers deserve and need a raise.
Well, I think we have looked at some of the studies, especially our own business department, DBED, had a study a couple years ago that indicated that $18 an hour would be a wage that would be needed to have people survive, a single person survive in Hawaii. And
groups like the Hawaii Retail Merchants Association say that they're not opposed to giving workers a raise. They know that that's needed, but they say, given the last 2 years that many small businesses have been through, it might not be possible for some of them to weather the storm. Here's President Tina Yamaki.
Our local businesses probably can't afford that steep increase. I believe the Chamber just did a survey not too long ago with 450 people plus businesses responding, and they said if the minimum wage goes up to $18, 30% of their businesses will close. Right now, we can afford up to $15, but no more than that.
Worker advocacy groups like Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice say that businesses will be able to weather that increase. They say it's been done before and that it is time for Hawaii to do that. Here's Executive Director Gavin Thornton.
Really happy that the legislation is at where it's at right now. It doesn't get us quite to a living wage, but it gets us so much closer. Our ultimate goal is that we get to a point where if you're working 40 hours a week, you're able to afford a roof over your head and food on the table. We are so far away from that now, but this will get us so much closer.
That legislation still has a long way to go here at the State House. Right now, it needs to make it out of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. If it does that, it could go to the Senate for a full vote and then to conference, where both the House and Senate would work to finalize it before sending it to the governor's desk for a signature or a veto. Of course, we'll keep you updated as that measure moves through the state capitol. I'm Casey Lund. For now, we'll send things back to you.
Sticking with state politics now, today on Sunrise, we talked to Civil Beat's Chad Blair about tasers. You know, they were just made legal, and now there's efforts to restrict them. Here's him and Grace Lee in that discussion.
And Chad, this is just an example of sometimes you pass something and then you realize, uh-oh, right?
Good morning, Grace. Yeah, this happens all the time at the legislature, the councils as well. But yeah, in this case, on January 1st, electric guns, which include tasers, which include stun guns, they became legal for use in the state of Hawaii. We were one of the last states to approve this. It's complicated. It has to do with the Constitution. But already the legislature is looking at amending that law to find and identify, we call them sensitive areas, places where maybe you shouldn't bring those electric guns. They include currently proposed public schools, buildings owned by the state or county. That would include the state capitol. That would include Iolani Palace, libraries, arenas, buses, on and on and on. We'll see how it goes. But the concern is, should you be able to bring these electric guns anywhere in the state?
In talking about this, what are kind of the pros and cons for restricting access?
You know, in many ways, they boil down to those basic arguments over Second Amendment rights, right? I should own a weapon in order to defend myself. It is a constitutional right. And now you're telling me I can't bring these stun guns, these tasers into places that I fear I may be attacked or someone will harass me. But the other argument is, look, this is really about public safety. Do you really need to bring an electric gun into a public school, into a library? There should be places in which safety is guaranteed by the government.
Can you explain this whole stand your ground issue and why this has come up here?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. This is based on the Florida law. This is another bill that, by the way, is now dead at the legislature, but it'll probably come back at some point. And really what it amounts to is that if someone attacks your dwelling, your apartment, your house, your home, you should be able to defend yourself with a weapon. We all know about that famous case that happened some years ago in Florida. Same arguments applying pro-Second Amendment, anti-Second Amendment, but that bill is dead. The stun gun bill does continue for now.
All right, Chad Blair from Honolulu Civil Beat, we thank you for your time today and for your expertise in this. And if you want to read the full article, you can go to civilbeat.org or you can text 66866 for that newsletter.
Now to the state's weekly COVID numbers. The health department is reporting 5 more COVID-related deaths and 827 new infections. The breakdown of cases includes 517 on Oahu, 84 on Kauai, 68 on Maui, and 53 on the Big Island. Molokai is adding 2 cases.
Health officials say it appears like the U.S. is getting the upper hand on the COVID-19 pandemic. The CDC predicts less than 13,000 people may die from the virus over the next 4 weeks. That's nearly a 50% drop from the previous forecast and the lowest that number has been thus far this year. The CDC also predicts that hospitalizations will decrease between now and mid-April. After a record 2021 for home sales, Oahu real estate experts are planning for the market to remain competitive and for those prices to keep going up. According to the Honolulu Board of Realtors, last year saw nearly 12,000 sales, 7,000 of which were condos. The current median price for a single-family home is over $1.1 million. And you'll recall just last week the Feds raised interest rates, which now stands at 4.5%. The head of the Honolulu Board says it's still way too early to tell what kind of impact the rate hike will have.
Sometimes you'll see a shift of people who are initially looking in the single family market shift towards a condo as an option, and mainly because of price point and the inventory available for condo market versus single family. So you'll see some of that shifting with rates going up. People just have to reassess. And it's actually most of the really professional realtors out there are having that conversation with their customers now. Let's relook at the numbers.
February sales in Waikiki and Kaka'ako saw a 64% and 53% jump compared to last year.
Now to severe weather on the mainland. Tornadoes ripped through New Orleans, killing at least 2 people and injuring many more. Homes were knocked off their houndations and debris scattered far and wide. David Bernard is on the ground and brings us this report.
Dude, holy. That is what it looked like, a tornado moving through a major American city.
New Orleans. This is what cut through parts of New Orleans and moved into nearby St. Bernard Parish. The twister moved through New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward without doing much damage. But as it touched down in St. Bernard Parish, it was devastating. James Dickerson was in his home in Araby, Louisiana, with his 5-year-old son.
And the house started shaking, and then when it pulled the roof off, I was, sheltering him, and then it was pulling me off the ground.
His house is now ruined.
Dining room here, I had bookcase, anyway, there's the front door, was there.
Oh, that was a church.
The damage in St. Bernard Parish is widespread. Power lines are down everywhere. Streets are littered with debris that is actually pieces of people's homes.
It's the porch of my friend's house. It doesn't have a roof anymore.
This tornado spawned from the same weather system that originally started in Texas on Monday and caused extensive damage there and in Oklahoma and now 3 other states along the Gulf Coast as the line of weather moves eastward.
We heard it coming down the street. It was a lot of whistling.
Back here where we are in Araby, Louisiana.
I'm just glad mostly everybody seems to be accounted for. I think there was a couple of issues a block away from us, but other than that, we're safe.
As we were driving around assessing the damage, we saw this school bus tossed like a toy. That's a 25,000-pound school bus, so you can imagine the force of this tornado. And right across the street, this home was moved off of its blocks about 5 yards, and then it pushed into the neighbor's home, pushed the neighbor's home, into the other neighbor's home. I mean, this is where the front door used to be, right? You go into the house right here. That's where it is now. The family was inside when the tornado moved it off its blocks. Imagine that. David Begnaud, CBS News, right outside New Orleans in Araby, Louisiana.
Scary video there for sure. Yeah.
Tornadoes fascinate me.
Yeah, fascinating, but they can be terrifying. I grew up in Tornado Alley. My hometown, Murfreesboro, Illinois. One thing it's known for really is it was part of the tri-state twister in the 1920s. It's, to this date, it holds the record for most casualties, which I think is 200 plus.
Wow.
So, yeah, always learned about that in school. But guys, nothing like that here. Look outside right now as we take a live look from our downtown tower camera. Let's turn things over to Guy Hoggy with a look at what the days ahead are like.
The front that's moving over the state might help us with our drought situation. It's probably going to help with the with the severe drought just north of Hanalei. But this is before the rain came down, right? Not likely to help us because we haven't had much rain here in a while. Still severe drought for the leeward side. Most of Maui County is under severe drought, and they haven't gotten much rain. And then the Kohala area is suffering from severe drought, and we got abnormally dry conditions there. And this is the wettest part of the state, the windward side of the Big Island. So again, we're not going to see much in the way of significant rainfall today, although Kauai likely to get most of the rain that's left over from that dissipating front. The rest of us will see scattered windward and Mauka showers. We'll still see a fair bit of leeward sunshine. Let's call the skies partly sunny. 84, the expected high in Kahului, likely to be a little bit warmer. 83 in Kailua Kona. And remember, Kona could see some afternoon thunderstorms like they did yesterday, although widespread rain not expected on the Big Island or anywhere else, really.
Thank you, Guy, for that update. Let's see what the internet is talking about today. I want to take you to California, and we got some cool video to show you. Let me pull it up there. Yeah, close encounter with a mountain lion. This is from Irvine, California. The big cat was spotted outside some businesses there, evading animal control crews. Then came the most dramatic part. After an attempt to tranquilize the animal failed, it reportedly entered a technologies company. And let me back up this video and we'll play it again. And it was just walking around past employees. Can you imagine being in here in the newsroom and a mountain lion? It wouldn't happen here. Maybe we'd have a wallaby at most. Officials were finally able to corner it safely and sedate the lion. They took it to an animal care center. That's a pretty big lion.
Yep.
Whoa. Wow.
Look at those paws.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. And look what was found at a construction site in Sheldon, Iowa. So, any guesses?
A rock?
It's the tooth of a giant woolly mammoth. How random is that? So the tooth, nearly a foot long, weighs over 11 pounds, and it's suspected to be more than 20,000 years old.
Whoa.
Gnarly.
Yeah. Woolly mammoths, cool animals.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get to today's good news now. We're going to take you over to Eva Beach to meet a man who's really striving to reach new heights. Here's Jim Mendoza with his story.
What's up, Tribe Fam? It's co-founder Dylan here, and I just wanted to talk to you about priorities.
Dylan Kittigwa is a very extreme athlete. The longest distance he's run during a race is 240 miles, but the steps he really wants to take are 29,000 feet to the top of the world.
I'm an island boy trying to climb Mount Everest, basically.
Kittigwa was born in Guam and raised in Hawaii. For years, he's dreamed of summiting the mountain. He even has a name for it, Eva to Everest.
And no one has ever done it from my culture and from my island. And I would like to do that to empower myself, but also to empower those people from the island to do things that are beyond their realm of thought.
He wants to climb the mountain by 2024, and he had a taste while living in Nepal during a stint with the Peace Corps.
In 2019, I climbed these shorter peaks of 15,000 feet, and then last year I climbed to Everest Base Camp at about a little over 18,000 feet.
Kittigwa's quest includes climbing Everest without a guide and without the aid of oxygen. To train, he runs very long distances. This week, he'll do a 100-mile ultra-marathon around the perimeter of Guam.
At the end of June, I'll be running 205 miles around the perimeter of Lake Tahoe. In 2023, I plan to run across America as the first Pacific Islander and Asian to do it.
A big obstacle to his Everest dream is money. He's trying to raise more than $100,000 through crowdfunding.
What you want in life isn't going to be easy, is what I'm trying to say, and you have to work for it.
Kittigwa has his share of naysayers and critics, but he says that won't silence his inner voice that tells him it's when, not if, he makes it to the mountaintop. Jim Mendoza, Hawaii News Now.
And if he wants a partner, we have a volunteer right here.
Sure, right. Ultramarathoners blow my mind. Like,
yeah, right?
Holy moly.
All right, we got some other news still trending that we need to get to.
Yeah, Harry Styles fans, listen up. Mark your calendars for May 20th. That's when his new album, Harry's House, is set to be released. So it's the third album from the Grammy-winning 28-year-old, and it'll have 13 songs. You can check out the album cover and a trailer for it on his social media. And the story behind the title isn't clear, but it borrows its name from the 1978 Joni Mitchell track, Harry's House / Centerpiece, and apparently Harry Styles is a big Joni Mitchell fan.
Me too. I have to be honest, I do not know much about Harry Styles other than he was in One Direction. I know a lot more about Joni Mitchell.
I didn't even know he was in One Direction, John. You're that much cooler than I am.
I hope I'm right.
Yeah, don't take us.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm right. All right, guys. One of those cool auction stories we need to get to. A 20th century treasure is expected to nab a staggering sum when it goes to auction very soon. It's Andy Warhol's famous shot sage blue Marilyn. Everyone knows this image. It could go for $200 million when it hits the block in May. The auction house describes the work as, quote, the absolute pinnacle of American pop. But I said it with a little British accent because it's at Christie's. And it's really fancy.
And John, you were right. He was a member of One Direction.
Thank you for Googling that real fast.
I had to know.
Yes. It's confusing. All those boy bands out there. All right, guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now. Don't forget, we're podcasting all the time here at Hawaii News Now. Just search Hawaii News Now wherever you get your podcasts. You get news updates. Lynn Kawano has a podcast. Jim Mendoza has a podcast. This Is Now has a podcast.
Stephanie Lum has a podcast.
That one's a good one. Yep. You guys, now don't forget, catch the latest news on First at 4 on KHNL. Of course, that's at 4 o'clock. See ya.